I'm Mama Faye, and today we're going to talk about disciplinary action
And
processes.
addressing workplace misconduct and
The
concerns.
disciplinary action process is an important role of a mid-level manager. You're going to need to know how to deal with those staff that have done certain type of incidents, whether it's poor performance, whether it's type of inappropriate behavior, and sometimes it can even get to the level of abuse or some type of altercation. What is disciplinary action? It is an action that was taken by the company as a result of a person breaking the rules, or it can be for their low performance or poor performance. It is also a way of holding a person accountable for their actions. The ultimate primary goal of disciplinary action is for the behavior or the poor performance to stop and that the person will take full responsibility for their actions. However, before you would begin any disciplinary action process, there must be a policy, a rule, a protocol, a standard, or some type of code of conduct that was violated. There is no action that can be taken if you don't have one of these, and it also can be a law that was broken. Those are pretty much your basic things that will bring about someone having to go through this process. Then the person must be aware of that policy, that rule, the protocol, the standard, or conduct. And they should already be aware of the laws in their particular state where they live. They're still responsible, even though they work for a particular company. They should know the laws that govern their actions in their particular state. So the person has to be aware of the ones that are in your company, and that is going to be through your training or whatever type of training that you provide to that particular staff before or during their hire. Is critical that you make sure that they are aware of all the policies and have access to the rules and the protocols and the standards or your particular code of conduct. Then there must be evidence that the person was aware of the policy. Usually they usually have to sign or do some type of acknowledgement form that says that they are aware and they understand what they are and what the results of their action can produce. And so this is very key to any manager. It's very important that you know, make sure that all of your staff is aware of the company's policy. Usually, in most companies, if there is no policy, there's no rule, no protocol or standard for a particular action, then a person cannot be held accountable unless they have broken a law. This is very key because many managers have made the mistake holding someone or doing some type of disciplinary action. The person was able to come back and fight to get their job back or that position back, and it was simply because the manager may have felt that something was wrong or the incident was inappropriate or there was poor performance. However, when you went to review the policies and the protocols and the standards for that particular action, there was no policy written. It was just an unspoken rule. So you must make sure that there is a policy, a rule in place, or protocol or in place, and that it was understood that this was the policy, the rule, the protocol, or standard. And now this doesn't cover when a law has been broken. Anytime a law has been broken, that is outside of the organization's guidelines or their policy for that. Anyone should know that they shouldn't kill somebody else. So if they murder somebody at the job, even though you don't have it written down, you know, no murdering someone, the fact that they broke the law they can be fired or terminated. And then, of course, law enforcement would get involved and they have no recourse because if you broke the law, then you have no recourse. You, as a mid level manager, always wants to make sure that your boss is aware of any situation and the reason for a disciplinary action to begin for any particular staff person under you. So you would also want to get some type of advice from the human resource department, the director, or the person that is responsible, not necessarily the person that answers the phone. But you need to get that information from someone who knows about that process and get some level of guidance as to what steps to take. Also, you want to know the policies of your organization that govern their disciplinary process. You want to have a little bit of understanding, of course, of certain laws as well. Sometimes, and in some organizations, depending on the severity of the incident, some organization require you to get in touch with their legal attorneys as well to find out what that next course of action is going to be as well. You want to also make sure that sometimes there are other people like a compliance officer or there's somebody who's over a type of risk department that also has to be made aware as well. So make sure that you are very well versed on that particular process before you want to start any type of disciplinary process. Next, you want to know what was the policy or the conduct that was not followed. That is going to be key to how you're going to explain this to the person. You need to have a specific policy or a specific code of conduct that was not followed. And then, of course, we said that the person was they made aware. Were they aware that this particular policy exists or this particular code of conduct exists? Again, if there was no policy for a particular action, then sometimes you will have to, if it's very important, you need to create one or update an existing policy. That has to be approved. These are not something that you can just write out and give to your staff. Usually these policies have to be approved by your company, and then you can go ahead and then you would educate the person on the new policy. That when you have that meeting with them, that one-to-one meeting with them, let them know that there's a new policy as a result of that, and you will be held accountable from this day moving forward. If you break that particular policy, then it would, and then let them know what is going to be the results. And then also, because you're creating a new policy or updating an existing one, then you want to also include another meeting with the rest of your department and to let them know that there was a new policy that was created. And therefore, moving forward, this is what everybody is going to need to abide by. But if there was a policy in place or a code of conduct, then next you must decide what is the best plan to be taken. And that is going to bring that person in and do a verbal. Maybe it wasn't that, a serious, real negative outcome. Maybe it was the person's first time. And so maybe you want to give them what we call a verbal warning, or you may say, okay, this really was severe. It caused a bad outcome. Somebody was hurt, or somebody could have been hurt, and so, or this was not their first time. They were told. So now we're going to move to a written course of action. Now, sometimes when we say giving a verbal warning, we sometimes managers may confuse that with they don't have to document anything. But even though you are giving a verbal warning, you still need to write and document somewhere that you gave that verbal warning and what was said and what was the reason for the verbal warning. And there are specific things that we're going to talk about that you need to still write even though it's a verbal warning. And of course, when it's a written warning, usually that means it's a little bit more severe, or it's been a repeated offense or incident. So now we're actually getting what, most people understand the term being written up. They say I got written up today, and that's meaning that it's documented. There's a procedure for the written one as well. Now, to prepare to meet with that person and to complete a plan of correction or action plan, you're going to write down what type of warning this is, that it's verbal, because you want to remember to remind yourself to let the person know that this is a verbal warning, and you may have to explain what that means, what policy was broken. These are things that you want to go over with the person, and this is also what you're going to prepare. So I'm telling you how to prepare and complete this meeting with the person. And so you're going to look at what policy was broken, what type of behavior led to this particular meeting, or it could be, like we said, even a performance thing where they forgot to do something that they're supposed to do. And so if that particular policy was broken, and then you want to explain to them what led up to you having to come in for this meeting, so that they'll understand clearly what it is that was not met. And then you're going to review the policy. Take that opportunity to go over that policy or go over that code of conduct and explain and discuss it with them. Let this be something where they get to share with you, and you all talk about what would be a better behavior. Sometimes it needs to be a discussion because sometimes a person may truly not understand. It's your opportunity to explain and get clarity, for them to ask for clarification. If there is additional training that person may need, that you also provide them with opportunity that we can get you additional training. If it's something that has to do with performance, provide that at that time. Also, if it's something that has to do with behavior, you want to discuss what is appropriate behavior, what ways that they can manage if it's some type of conflict, and you need to go over how they can prevent having these types of conflicts and what would be appropriate behavior. You want to discuss with them a date that you want to follow up with them. Sometimes you will need to give them some type of plan, steps, that next steps that they would need to take. And also you want to be clear. Make sure that you're very clear on what will happen if the behavior continues or if the poor performance continues. Again, as always, you're going to look at your organization's guidelines. A lot of times make sure that you're documenting all of this with the meeting. Even though you may have prepared and document prior to the meeting, once you're in the meeting, you still want to be writing down. You don't have to write down verbatim everything that is being said, but you do want to highlight your talking points, especially the next steps that was discussed, and you want to document that you did review the policy, and if it's behavior, poor behavior, and also you want to document that you provided them with a date that you're going to follow up with them, so that they know that there is going to be some type of follow-up. A written action plan usually happens after you've already had a verbal warning. Sometimes it will not happen, verbal warning will not happen if the behavior was severe enough or the policy that was broken, it caused some type of loss or some type of negative outcome. And a lot of times written will be, it's not the person's first time. This is a repeated thing with this person, or it couldn't be the first time, but there was a zero tolerance policy, like in many organizations, for abuse, for stealing, for fighting. If a law was broken, then of course that would automatically go straight to a written action plan. You would not start with verbal, it would go to written. But of course, this would be, you would make sure that your boss is aware, you make sure the human resources is aware, because they would need to be in on what this plan of action is going to look like, and what specific details that you need to make sure that the person is aware of, and what should not be discussed. And also you would need to let at this time what would be the next step in the process. You always, whether it's a written action plan, and especially if it's a write-up with a consequence, and we're going to talk about what consequences that can come out of be a write-up. You want to always make sure that you're contacting your boss. Always be prepared to provide them with, and HR, you always want to be able to provide them with the details. You want to receive any guidance from your boss as how to proceed, because the last thing you want to happen is you go ahead and say this is what the next steps are going to be, and then 9 times out of 10 that person is going to go over your head, and they're going to go and request a meeting with your boss or with the human resource department. So you want to make sure that you, your boss, and the human resource department is all on the same page before you meet with this person. And of course, depending on the severity, you want to make sure that you're following your company's policy for handling severe cases. Of course, we said to contact your human resource department for assistance. You also want to write down who was contacted, their name, their title, the date and the time that they were notified. Because if this is something, especially when it's a write-up, many a times may have been a loss, there may have been a negative outcome, or a law may have been broken, and you want to make sure that you as manager have documented evidence that you did speak to your boss. They were aware of the what had happened and the incident and how it was being handled. And you also, if you contacted your human resource department or a compliance officer or even law enforcement or an attorney for the organization, you want to make sure that you have all of those names, their titles, their date, and the time that you notified them. And of course, on there is going to be the details that you provided them with, and any guidance that they gave you. You want to have that written down as well. In some cases, they may require you to write down a specific action plan that is going to be given to the person. So you want to make sure that you document or write down the type of consequence that can happen if instructed to do so. Of course, you wanted to iterate the policy that was broken. You want to review the policy or provide that person with a copy of the policy so that they would have it as well after you've already discussed it. Of course, you want to have on that action plan the date that you will follow up with them. And you also want to, on the action plan, sometimes, especially when it has to do with low performance, you may put in the person's name, and the person will do whatever action that is needed for them to do. And so you want to make sure that that's clear And then you want to ask that person if they have any questions about the plan that was provided to them. And this is in cases where there is an actual written plan that you must provide to the person. And of course, you want to give them a copy, and then you want to keep a copy, and you want to forward a copy to your boss, and in many cases to your human resource department. Also, a part of that action plan may be additional information that the human resources require that you give that person. They are to sign that they were given that written notice. Many may not agree with the decision. However, they're not signing that they agree with the decision, but you will let them know that they're signing that they received the the plan, and just so you know that they do have a right to refuse to sign. But in these cases, you would definitely follow your organization's process and their guidelines. So make sure that you know what they are going into any meeting where you're going to be providing a notice that they must sign and date that they receive that particular notice. Also, you can also give them an opportunity if they want to write down what their disagreement is. They're free to do so. This is not a time to have a back and forth. They may not, like I say, agree with the decision. This is just your opportunity to make them aware and to provide them with the information. Based on your company's policy, always have another manager or higher in the meeting when you meet with another person. Uh, Try as much as you can to not meet with someone, especially in a written, even sometimes with a verbal. Try to have someone else there who can also hear and understand and know what has taken place in that particular meeting. Always be polite, never be defensive. Always allow the person to have time to explain or to ask questions. This is not just this is a write-up and I'm telling you this information and you need to say yes ma'am, yes sir, and then this is a done deal. This is an opportunity for you to be able to explain, but you also want to allow them time to be able to explain and to ask questions because maybe they have additional information that would be maybe change the outcome. If they again refuse to sign or do not agree, respect that decision. Then what you must do on the written um, paper is you need to date, time, and write that they refuse to sign. You want to note also the names of those who were in attendance. Whoever that other manager was that was in the meeting, you want to make sure that you note their name as well, that they were in attendance. And then, of course, as we have said, we can't stress enough that your organization may have their own process or guidelines, so get to know them because they may have, it may be written a little bit different. If the goal is not met, then disciplinary action can result in a plan of correction. It can also result in a suspension. The person, if they have been recently promoted and because of that promotion, they took advantage of their position, then they can be demoted and can result in a termination, meaning that they fired. So it can go to these particular links, but the primary goal is first to try to see if the conduct or the poor performance can be corrected. And then if not, then you will follow further action, and that would be one of these four types of action. Usually it's going to be based on your company's policy. You should never, as a manager, suspend, demote, or terminate any person without them being made aware that that particular action is being done. So that's why even if it's a severe incident, you would want to get one of them on the phone and or all of them on the phone, and then they will decide what is going to be the next course of action. Someone a verbal or a written notice, it can be very upsetting for them, and a few people may become angry and upset, and some people can even become violent. So, with that said, always be aware of their body language. Always make sure that you're the one that's sitting near the door so that no one can trap you into a room. Let them sit opposite of you. And if you notice that the meeting is escalating, do not proceed unless there is some level of security. And then even then, you may want to stop that process and your advice from your boss or from the human resource as to how to proceed any further. This is not a time for you to take on being a police or being security or any of that nature. You're just there as a boss to make sure that the people that work under you, that they are doing their job and that they're doing it safely, and that you're protecting the other staff, yourself, and the customers or visitors or whoever there. And also ultimately that you're trying to get that person to go ahead and take full responsibility and to correct as well. But there are times when people can't see it. Sometimes maybe having some type of issue that's going on outside of the organization, that the reason why they're upset, frustrated, or angry, or upset. So, as that mid-level manager, you want to be aware when it's escalating, it's time to end that meeting and then get further advice. Once the meeting is over, you would always have a follow-up meeting or a conversation with your boss, and you're going to provide them with an update of what happened after the meeting. You're going to set up a follow-up meeting if it's not a termination, as far as it's in writing you had the write-up. You're going to go ahead and put the follow-up meetings on your calendar so you don't forget, because of course if you forget, the person is going to assume that they got away with it because you had the verbal or you had the write-up, but you never did come back and check. So you want to make sure that you go ahead after you have that meeting to immediately put a follow-up meeting on the calendar. You want to send that to your boss, but you also want to send it to HR to let that person know that our next meeting will be, let's say, the next Friday or 2 weeks from now, and we'll see how you are doing, especially when it has to do with their performance and their behavior. If human resources involved, you may have paperwork that you need to submit. Sometimes it's through a internal system, so make sure that you have access to that internal system and that you provide and submit that paperwork. Don't just leave it around in your office somewhere and say, I'll do it another time. Go ahead right after you have that meeting with that person and submit that paperwork, because it's going to become key in the days ahead as to whether if that person correct, great, you can provide that particular feedback that the person has corrected and there was no further incidents. Or if it goes the other way and there is repeated incidents, you're going to have to follow this process all over again, and you're going to do the documentation that is needed so that you have the documentation at the time that you need it. Now, with all of these lessons, you are now ready to be a great direct manager. And now you have a way of showing your successes. Now go be great. To learn more information, you can go to the website MOMAFEY-HT. Also, you can follow me at MOMAFEY lowercase ht on all social media platforms.